Hello everyone, in this video we will be talking about how this NCP Google Spreadsheet tool helps us in documenting medication and NFPF. Please note that again, this tool cannot actually replace us for critical thinking, and it can only help us in documentation as well as calculations. Linking the data together, it is still our responsibility. So this tool helps us for documentation of medication. And here, this tab called MED, short form for medication, highlighted in blue, and it helps the documentation of NFPF. In this tab, NFPF underlined in orange. Let's start with the medication first. There are only three major sections for the medication. Starting from the left, it's the documentation part, followed by the recording part. This is where we type in most of our data. And the third part is the database as well as the setting. I put the database and setting together as one major section. Let's try this out. When we go in to see a patient, we would have this medication chart in which all of the medication are written. This table is more or less trying to copy the categories that exist in that medication chart to ease how we actually put them in. So let's start with something simple, paracetamol, and the patient is being given 1 gram a day. Now the dosage will be different, but for the sake of demonstration we'll just put it here, and he was actually given it on the 1st of October today. There are instances when a patient is given a certain medication but was discontinued when we actually visit them. In these cases, we can actually put in the date as well to notify that this patient actually already stopped with this medication, but he has a recent history of having this medication. Again, let's try another medication, tramadol, for chronic pain. Let me put in again 1 gram and 1 today as well. Okay, you'll see that the sentences are actually being generated. Paracetamol 1 gram on the 1st of October. If we don't actually include any of the dates, then nothing will be displayed along with the inside the parentheses. The users and FDI are actually not displayed along. Reason being, I designed it for another purpose, which I will later on explain. Now the NCP will also be displaying the similar things as a dime, except all of them are entered instead. Now I'll be explaining on how this database and setting as well as this use work. Initially, I wanted to connect this Google spreadsheet with the database that exists in MIMS. Is it? The pharmaceutical database that are frequently being used by current days pharmacists in Malaysia. But I was never able to find a way to connect them together because I lacked the technological skills to connect a website database with that of the Google Sheet. So this thing has more or less just remained unused as a relic from an idea that I've given up at this point. But these are some of the medications that I included and tried to document myself before I started to try with MIMS, MIMS. So these use are actually meant to help the users to know what the medication is actually being used for. So for instance, for tramadol, if the Google spreadsheet was able to detect there is a false tramadol, it will immediately show that this medication is used for chronic pain. So for new students like us who never actually saw all these medications, it will be an easier educational experience where we don't have to go up into the memes to type it out, because if I was able to make my previous idea work, then the memes are already built into this Google spreadsheet, and we don't have to go through the usual route to find out the information, because that website is actually designed for healthcare workers instead of healthcare students who need the information accessed immediately. Okay, but that I may be wrong. But that's the uses of use FDI and database. So 3 sections: documentation for forming sentences, and recording for all of the data that we would like to key in. Next is our NFPF. Again, there are also 3 main sections here. Documentation section that stretch all the way down, and then the recording section where we key in most of the data that we would like, and the next one will be our NFPF form, which actually spans all the way across to the end and also taking down the space below. Let's start with recording first. So this is the part where we can actually record the patient's blood pressure. Let's say if the patient is at 150 with 69 diastolic BP, and on the 30th of September his was 180. So the BV status here will immediately be computed as HPT level 2 and HPT level 1. It uses the table over here, the reference over here, normal elevated, HPT 1, HPT 2. So for normal it's 119, anything below or equals to 119, and anything equals to 80. So let's try that. 119 and 80. Oh, 50? 60? Yes, then the value would already become normal. The diagram will only display the one with the newer state, which is the one to the most left. It won't display the one with the newer state, it will only display the one with the most left. Then we have our temperature. If it's anything above 37.5, it will become red to indicate that it's high. There are potential inflammation response going on inside the body. Fluid balance, nothing. There are no formula that actually will influence this data. It will just display it. The pulse rate as well. For the sake of demonstration, I will just put as 49. This is another idea that I wanted to work with, but I haven't actually come around doing it. Next is the observation. Nutrition focused physical fighting also includes the examination part. Sometimes we can't use this table, area of exam. You can put all this in just for the recording purposes, but whatever that you tick in here will not actually be recorded in the time. You have to manually type in at all these areas. So for instance, the head slightly indented temple, then only will it be displayed over here, slightly indented temple. And for this one, you actually have to type a full sentence by yourself. It will only add on the full stop for you. Next is the eye. You can let's try the mouth and teeth. Poor dentition. It will also be displayed slightly indented temple. Sorry. So on and so forth. The way that this thing is arranged is from top to bottom. So if you have anything wet hair, it would arrange by 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 1 and 2. It starts from top to bottom. So if I have something over at this leg here, it should be at the last in this sentence after poor dentition. So leg can be edema at leg, left ankle. So it would be at the very last. There is a body figure summary here that gives you a better view. Sometimes we type too long of a sentence that even I myself would forget what I actually typed. So this is actually where things are easier to see. So that's for the analysis section. This is just for your own recording purposes, and this is where the forms, the NFPF forms, come in. We have three types of form here: subjective global assessment for SGA, borang saringan pemakanan. We don't always use this. I just put it in because I happen to have that copy, and also the malnutrition inflammation score that we would use for patient with CKD. Okay, for this one, some of the data are already tied with other tabs. For instance, with CMHX, the names, the RN number, and the date will already be displayed. The weight and height also would have been displayed. All the other things in SGA you will have to enter it yourself. So let's say I tick this, this, and this. You would see that none of the ABC is actually computing. That's because all these things I haven't actually come around to compute them, to make them display by itself, and for the Google spreadsheet to calculate for itself if we are at the A, B, or C rank level. So this is something that you have to work it out yourself. You have to key in yourself, but at least the form is already in digital form, and so on and so forth. And finally, you can put in the patient is at level A. Now, this SGA score will not actually be reflected in here because I haven't got around again to program it to reflect that SGA score inside. In fact, this table is actually designed to serve that purpose, that if I click this, then Google Spreadsheet will recognize, okay, the user would like to include the SGA score inside his ADIME and NCP, then it will display it. But if I unclick it, even if the A, B, or C here is clicked, the SGA score will not actually be used. The same goes for the MIS as well as the borang saringan makanan. But this is something that's not working right now. But I hope that it is helpful for you nevertheless. Next is our borang saringan pemakanan. Some of the things is already ticked. You see that anything that actually have a formula inside would already be automatically ticked. This PMI as well, reference does not exist. This is another error, so that's something that we'll have to fix. This is also something that we'll have to fix, or you have to manually key in yourself if you are using it. But in my experience, I never actually used this form before. But if it does come into popular usage, then it's something that we'll have to look into, and so on and so forth. But this one, I actually made it to calculate the score itself. Next is our MIS. This MIS form, you have to tick it yourself, but there is something here that assists you to tell you where you can actually find out all of the data. Some of the data can actually be directly linked. For instance, the anthropometry data can be directly linked, but I haven't come around doing that, so that's something that we'll have to do by yourself again. But there is one automation, time-saving feature of this form, is if you look over here, the score is 0 out of 30. But if I click any of the score will actually start adding up itself. And once you click everything, if you found out everything, then you can use the standards to evaluate if the patient actually have a normal score or not. Here I did not actually include the standard for it. Okay, so that's all for the NFPF. Again, there are only 3 major sections: the documentation part, the analysis part, followed by this body figure summary for you to have a better look at what you type down. This is only for your own recording purpose. This is designed to serve a purpose, but it didn't end up happen. Then we have the NFPF form, SGA form, that you have to type in ABC yourself, borang saringan pemakanan, which most of the things are automated, but a few things that need to fix, as well as the MIS form that will calculate the score for you. That is all for this video. I hope that you have found it helpful. You can leave any questions in the comment, and I'll see you in the next video.